Thank you for joining us. This webinar is brought to you by WetPlan, and WetPlan is made up of several organizations that contribute. One is the Florida Native Plant Society, Cocoloba chapter, and Marlene Rodak is on the line with us today from Cocoloba chapter. Maria Romero's here from Lee County Division of Natural Resources, and she's their TMDL coordinator. Andy Tilton's here with Johnson Engineering. I don't think Ernesto Lasso de la Vega is on today, but Pondwatch is one of our partners, and Pondwatch is through Lee County Hyacinth Control. And then there's myself, Karen Miller. I'm with GHD, we're an engineering firm, and I am their community outreach manager. So welcome today. Today's speaker is Kara Tyler-Julian. She's a mosquito biologist with Lee County Mosquito Control District, and she's going to be here talking to us about mosquitoes, midges, and more, creating a beneficial balance. So Kara, like I said, is a mosquito biologist for Lee County Mosquito Control District, working in the field validation department, where she conducts trials of products on mosquitoes. In her free time, she raises butterflies and gardens for insects. She received her master's degree in entomology from the University of Florida. Her current work focuses on insecticide resistance management, as well as all aspects of integrated pest management. So welcome, Kara. I'm going to stop sharing and let you start sharing.
All right, thank you. Okay, I should be sharing now, and hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. Like she said, I'm going to start talking about mosquitoes, midges, and other insects as well. So I am an entomologist, and insects are my jam, and I love talking about them any chance I get. And mosquitoes just happen to be the current insect that I am concentrating on. So I'll talk about them and other insects you might find in your pond. I'm going to start by just a brief introduction to wetlands and ponds, which you guys already know about because presumably you have a close relationship with a pond somewhere in your community. These are extremely beneficial to the ecosystem and to wildlife, as you probably already know. This is one of the best things you can do for wildlife outside of preserving natural habitat and planting native plants. This is the best thing you can do to really encourage a healthy ecosystem with a diverse array of wildlife in your area. And of course, in addition to that, wetlands are really important for filtering the water before it gets to our aquifer, filtering out pollutants and extra nutrients. And as part of the wetland, aquatic insects are one of the integral components that you really need in a wetland to keep it functioning the way it should. There are other components as well, but I'm going to focus on the insect component of our wetlands because that is my forte. The insects are important as a food source for other organisms, but they're also really important for water quality. They can be used to monitor water quality by looking at the different species of insects that you have in a water body and the abundance of the different species. And they can also help to filter the water, some of the insects. Some of them are filter feeders. And they are also important predators of each other, of fish, just to help create a balance so that nothing gets too out of whack. Mosquitoes, of course, are always top of the list. When people see a water body, they think that's going to be producing mosquitoes. That's not always the case, so I'll talk to you about mosquitoes and when they might be coming out of your pond and when they probably won't. In Florida, we have more than 80 species of mosquitoes. So a lot of people think that mosquito is just one insect, but we really have, there's across the world, hundreds, thousands of species of mosquitoes. But right here in Florida, we have at least 80. That number is increasing all the time as we get new invasive species. In Lee County alone, we have more than 40 species. I'm not sure what it is right now because, again, we find new species all the time. So that might be closer to 50 right now as it stands. The mosquitoes, all the species have an aquatic larval stage. So while the adults are terrestrial and flying about and biting us, their larvae need water. That's how they produce. So the adults will lay eggs on the water. Those eggs will hatch into larvae. Those larvae will live anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, depending on the species and resources. And then once they've completed their stage as a larva, they turn into a pupa. And after a couple of days as a pupa, they emerge as adults again. All these different species, they have different habitats. Some prefer floodwater habitats, so like puddles in the woods or the ditches in your neighborhood that only sometimes have water. Other species prefer permanent water habitats. Some need salt water, some prefer brackish, some will only go in fresh water. And then you have some that live in aquatic plants. Then we have some like this mosquito pictured here, the tiger mosquito, which live in containers in our yards. So that is a species that we are responsible for increasing the prevalence of. And you have other species like our native Waimea mosquitoes that live in bromeliads, especially our native bromeliads. These mosquitoes all also have different hosts. So each mosquito species will have a certain animal that it prefers to feed on. Some, like again, this tiger mosquito here, prefer human hosts. Then there's others that prefer to feed on domestic animals like cows and horses. Some species are what we call bird biters. They like to feed on birds. Some feed on reptiles. And then we even have a species in our area that feeds specifically on amphibians such as frogs. And those ones, you will not find that particular species biting you because it's very specific to just wanting to feed on frogs and toads. All of these species also have different flight ranges. So depending on the species, it may or may not ever end up in your neighborhood. So again, I'm gonna mention this mosquito here, the tiger mosquito. Its flight range is really, really small, maybe 300 meters or less. So they're going to stay right near where they have hatched out from. So if that mosquito came from a container in your neighbor's yard, it's gonna stay close to your neighbor's yard or your other neighbor. Whereas we have other species, such as the ones that are our main concern in Lee County, the salt marsh mosquitoes, they can fly up to 40 miles from where they hatch. So somebody in Lehigh being bitten by a salt marsh mosquito, it's not their fault it's biting them. It actually came from Fort Myers or Cape Coral out in the salt marsh. In your wetlands, in your permanent water bodies, such as a pond or a lake, you're not likely to be causing the problem. There are a few cases though. The reason it's not likely a source of mosquitoes is because you have predators. If you have a healthy, functioning pond or wetland that has fish and predatory aquatic insects in it, the mosquitoes are not likely to be coming from there. Maybe a few here and there, a very small amount, not enough for you to want to call and complain about. But for the most part, those predators are going to naturally keep the mosquitoes in check because just about everything in the water wants to eat mosquito larvae. They are like nature's little tiny hot dogs. The fish want to eat them. The aquatic predatory insects want to eat them. They have so many predators. So the few times where you might actually have mosquitoes coming from your pond, where your pond might indeed be the problem, is if you have certain aquatic plants in your pond, and those would be the two pictured here. So up here, water hyacinth, which is invasive, and water lettuce. These two can harbor larvae of a mosquito called Mansonia. That's the genus. And we have two species in this genus here in Lee County, which can and are problems in many places. And the reason they can be so successful, even when you have fish and other predators, is because they are specialized. So they have this special structure that they can use to pierce the roots of these plants. So they're able to pierce right into the roots of the water lettuce and water hyacinth, and that's how they get their oxygen. So they are stuck right into those roots, getting all the oxygen they need. And those roots are so dense that they provide shelter and cover from the predators. So the fish and predatory insects just aren't able to get into those masses of roots and eat these larvae as easily as they can other mosquito larvae. So if you have these plants, you can very well have a problem with the Mansonia mosquitoes. The other mosquito that could be a problem in permanent wetlands is the Cocolatidia mosquito, which breeds in cattails. Now, that's not as much of a problem down here, even though we have a lot of cattails. In 6 years of mosquito control, I've seen only 2 Coquilitidia perturbans mosquitoes. There are other parts of Florida where this is a major problem, but down here, we haven't seen them in huge numbers, at least anytime recently. So the cattail's not as much of a concern, but the water lettuce and water hyacinth will attract the Mansonia mosquitoes, and they are very aggressive mosquitoes. They bite hard, they're quite large. So you don't want these in your waterways, because you definitely don't want these adult mosquitoes. And these ones can also, the Mansonia can fly by some reports up to 8 miles from where the larvae are. So it might not even be in your neighborhood. They could be in a completely different city, a couple miles away, flying over to bite you. So the best way to prevent mosquitoes in wetlands, specifically the one that's most likely to be a problem, Mansonia, is to keep these plants to an absolute minimum, or not even there, these particular species, and keep your predators to a maximum. One predator that a lot of people know about is the eastern mosquito fish. So we do have a program right here at Mosquito Control where we do raise and release these mosquito fish. Our inspectors are out there every day releasing them in different spots. And you can also call to request these fish. They are free of charge. We do not charge for this service. Now, the reason you might not actually even need to call us to get these if you have a permanent water body is because this is a native fish. It's native to here. We didn't introduce it. It's been here long before us. And they are extremely common throughout most, maybe I shouldn't have put all there, but most Florida freshwater ecosystems. So most canals, lakes, ponds, rivers, streams. If there are fish there, there's probably going to be mosquito fish. These are the ones that people often refer to as minnows. So you'll see them, the very small fish on the edge of a water body. A lot of kids who grow up in Florida have grown up catching these with dip nets for fun. So they are already there, most likely. If you see tiny little minnows in your pond, that's these guys. You already have them. You do not need to call us to get more. You have plenty. They are larvivorous. They love to eat mosquito larvae, but also other things. So any other small aquatic invertebrates, smaller fish than them, so the fry of other species of fish, as well as their own fry, they will eat their own young. And they'll also feed on some detritus, some algae, just about anything. They have a 15-month lifespan, and they are live bearers. They reproduce very quickly. So even if we just release a few fish into a water body, they fill it in pretty quickly with their very high reproductive rate and their short lifespan. Again, they are free from Lee County Mosquito Control, but again, I like to stress that these aren't usually needed in permanent water bodies because you most likely have these there or another species of fish. Many, many species of fish that are native here like to eat mosquito larvae. They, like I said, they're delicious. A lot of creatures want to eat them. So even if you don't have mosquito fish, but you have other species of fish, they are probably eating your larvae. These are more meant for areas that don't already have any fish. So a new ornamental pond that somebody puts in their yard, these are perfect. We can give them these. Any other water features you might have, or temporary water bodies. So like if you notice the ditches in your neighborhood have filled up and they've been full of water for a few days, maybe a couple weeks, but there are no fish there, we can definitely bring fish out to those ditches. Again, there's a lot of other native fish that are larvivorous. So if you have fish, you're probably good. Now, another species of insect that is commonly confused with insects and can definitely be a problem in your pond and other permanent water bodies are these midges in the family Chironomidae. We get a lot of calls about these at Mosquito Control, and there are multiple species. I don't know how many down here exactly. We don't have an organization studying them as well as we do for mosquitoes. But the important thing is these do not bite. They're not a species that's going to be biting you at all. They don't have the mouth parts for it. They're just there hanging out. But like the mosquito, they do have an aquatic larval stage. So you can see over here, similar to the mosquito, the female lays eggs on the water. They hatch into aquatic larvae. Eventually they'll pupate and become adults. Unlike mosquitoes, they will be in the larval stage quite a bit longer, and the adults live much less time. So an adult mosquito can live for a couple weeks. In captivity, we can keep them alive for over a month. But these midges are only living for about 3 to 5 days out there. So if you see the adults, they're not surviving very long. So any kind of chemical treatment that we would spray on those adults wouldn't help because they're going to be dead in 3 to 5 days anyway. These can survive in both temporary and permanent water, and they hide in little mud tubes that keep them safe from most predators. There are some predators who can still get them out of those mud tubes, and sometimes they leave the mud tubes and the predators can get them then, but they do have a nice protective spot that allows them to be more numerous than we would like. They're also not picky about the water they live in, so they can live in moving water, stagnant, clean water, polluted water, and they like to live down in the soil and the muck at the bottom where they make those mud tubes. Some species can even tolerate really disgusting polluted water with high nutrients and low oxygen. So if you have a problem like that, it's probably killing off a lot of the predatory creatures that can't survive in those conditions, and then you're definitely going to have an even worse midge problem. Now, one good thing about these, I actually read an ecological paper that suggested these can be used to remove nutrients from the water and to the land. And the way they do that is you have these larvae feeding in the water. They're feeding on that biomass, all those nutrients in the water, putting it into their bodies. And then they leave the water as adults, taking all those nutrients and that biomass with them as their body, and they die on the land. And so those nutrients, all that biomass has been taken out of the water onto land. So if you have millions of these insects leaving the water, they're actually helping to remove nutrients from the water. So they can be good. And both the larvae and adults are food sources for wildlife. So a lot of people say, well, you know, mosquitoes are food sources for dragonflies and bats and swallows. Midges are the same size, if not larger than mosquitoes, can come off in larger numbers, don't bite us, and are just as delicious to those same creatures. So these are a great food source for a lot of animals. The reason they become problems on people's houses is because people like to keep their lights on at night, all night long. That's their energy bill, their choice, I guess. But when you keep your lights on at night all night, that disturbs a lot of insects in their behavior, because a lot of insects are attracted to light. That's how we catch them in traps. When you're an entomologist, you set out a light trap. So you're just pulling the insects to your house by keeping your lights on. Best thing to do, just keep your night lights off, close your blinds and curtains so they can't see the lights that are on in your house while you're staying up all night watching Netflix. And if you really want lights, you can absolutely use the motion sensor lights that come on only when somebody's trying to break in and are off the rest of the time. So keep the lights off and you won't have these covering the entire side of your house, hopefully. And the other thing you want to do is you want to keep the nutrients to a minimum and the aquatic plants that are taking those nutrients out to a maximum to really minimize these guys and their prevalence in your neighborhoods. So here I have a video of some chironomid larvae for people to see. So these are commonly called in the pet trade bloodworms. A lot of people will buy these and feed them to their aquatic fish and other aquatic organisms. They are quite delicious, I guess. So you can see them here flailing about, not inside their tubes. And then you have some down here who are in their tubes. This one just landed and is trying to build a tube really quickly. So that gives you an idea of their behavior and what they look like. They are very common though. We get these in with mosquito samples from the field all the time. So these ones actually just came last week in a sample of mosquito larvae. So some other insects you might find in the wetlands, which are good things to have. You definitely want to have a diversity of insects. Don't ever be upset if you see a certain insect because it's part of the balance. Dragonflies and damselflies, a lot of people know about these. They have an aquatic stage, and as adults, they tend to hang out around water bodies. These are predators. So they're going to be out there going after mosquito larvae as well as other things. We have mayflies, which are detritivores. They're down there feeding on the detritus. You have diving beetles. There are both predatory diving beetles as well as some that are herbivorous and feed on algae and other things. There are back swimmers, which are predatory insects, water boatmen, which are insects that feed on detritus. And we have water scorpions and water bugs, which are again predators. And there are many more. I'm not giving you an exhaustive list of all the insects you might find in the wetland. That would take way too long, but this is just some common ones that you might see if you go out there with a dip net to find out what you've got out there. And these three last are things you're not likely to find in your wetland. Caddis flies, Dodson flies, and alder flies. These have an aquatic larval stage, but they prefer clear running water. So they're going to be in a clear running stream, which we don't have a whole lot of down here. We have a few, if you know where to look, and I have gone out and found some Dobson flies under rocks in some of these clear streams, but you'll have to look hard to find those. Some quick information about dragonflies and damselflies. A lot of times people say, well, why don't we use these as biocontrol for mosquitoes? And that's because while they do eat mosquitoes, they also eat a lot of other things. So you see a picture down here on the bottom of one dragonfly eating another. That's very common. They're going to try to maximize their nutrient intake, just as we would. So if they have the choice to eat 1,000 sunflower seeds or one hamburger, they're going to go for the one hamburger. They're not going to go out catching 1,000 mosquitoes when they could just sit and wait, run out and grab a butterfly or a honeybee instead. Same thing with their larval stages. Their larval stages can feed on mosquito larvae, but there are bigger things out there for them to feed on. So here's a video actually of a dragonfly eating mosquito larvae. If you blink, you will miss it. So this is the dragonfly. See, it just got a larva there. And throughout the video, it's going to grab another larva, but these are sit and wait ambush predators. They're not out hunting. It's only eating the larvae when they bump right into it. When they just happen to swim right past it, it'll grab them, but it's not going to swim up to the surface here and eat all these other hundreds of larvae. And so that's why they wouldn't work as biocontrols out in wetlands, because you would need a high density of larvae for them to eat any of them. And they're certainly not going to eat all the larvae. So again, they'll eat anything they can catch, but they're going to prefer larger meals. So they will often be seen eating fish or tadpoles or beetles, or again, each other. They are very fond of eating each other if they can. As adults, they feed on the wing, but usually they will sit and wait on a perch for another insect to fly by, and then they'll fly out and catch it. And again, anything they can catch is fair game. I've even seen pictures on the internet circulating of a very large dragonfly eating a hummingbird. So while they will eat mosquitoes, they will also eat many other things. So if we were to have a large mass release program of dragonflies in the county, we would greatly impact our bees and butterflies, wasps, beetles, moths. They would all be impacted. So they aren't a targeted control mechanism. Here we have some other organisms. On the left, you have a picture of, these are the larvae of a diving beetle, and there's one eating a mosquito larva. And then on the right, I have a video of what is called a back swimmer over here, swimming around carrying a larva that it caught, and it's carrying it around like a little trophy. These guys are actually very good at catching larvae, and there was a study on these as a great biocontrol for in like containers, like a rain barrel or something, where they can be contained. They will hunt the larvae down. Unlike the dragonflies, they don't sit and wait. They will hunt, turn towards a larva, chase after it, and grab it. So they are pretty cool. Unfortunately, I missed the part where it hunted the larva down. It was too fast for my camera. You have other other larvae-eating beetles here. So these tiny little black things down here swimming around, they are eating all these mosquito larvae. It's hard to see, but there are a few of these beetles swimming around very fast, grabbing larvae out of the water. And this is a species of Dytiscidae, a kind of diving beetle. And over here are some larval diving beetles. You have some swimming around, playing tug of war with mosquito larvae, some swimming around with a mosquito larva. And then you can see on the bottom a tiny little dragonfly naiad sitting and doing nothing, because it's just a lazy ambush predator waiting for something to bump into it. Finally, you also have water scorpions, things like these guys, and also you have giant water bugs and toe biters, as they're called. These also would not be great for mosquito predation, because again, they're looking for larger prey. These guys have these large raptorial forelegs that they're using to grasp something, and a larva is going to slip right through that. So they're more going after tadpoles, fish, other larger insects than mosquitoes. So the way to keep mosquitoes and midges out of your waterways, you want to maximize your predators. So just make sure you have a good balance. Make sure you have a pond that's healthy enough and aerated enough to support fish and predatory aquatic insects. You want to minimize the nutrients and pollution entering your waterways. Again, that'll help keep your fish and predatory insect populations intact, as well as minimizing the available nutrients for midges to utilize to grow and complete their life cycle. So buffer zones are really great, having those areas planted around your pond to capture the runoff and filter it before it gets into there. But you also need to watch for, and you guys probably already know this, I'm probably repeating something you've already heard many times in talks. You want to watch for plant matter entering the waterways, because that plant matter will also break down, become nutrients, and contribute to that nutrient cycle. And another thing that people often, well, maybe not always, but some people don't think about is when you herbicide the aquatic plants. If you have an aquatic plant that you're trying to control with an herbicide, when that plant dies and sinks to the bottom, it again is releasing all those nutrients that it had locked up for you. Those nutrients are being released back into the water, and it's going to make the midge flies very, very happy. They will love that. So maximize the aquatic vegetation you have, other than things like this picture here with water lettuce or water hyacinth. You could probably do a few cattails. I'm a fan of cattails, so I'm not going to tell you don't plant any. You just don't let them get out of control, and definitely no water hyacinth or water lettuce. And again, make sure you keep your night lighting off, except for motion sensitive lighting. You'll save yourself money on your electric bill, and you'll also stop from confusing all the insects. It's not just midges who are going to be confused by that. You're confusing flies and moths and beetles that are active at night. So some of my favorite aquatic plants that I'm going to recommend for your ponds, just because I like them and I have my reasons. For your submerged aquatic vegetation, which you should have some, my two favorite are Cara. I mean, I think you know why, but Cara, or also called muskweed, muskgrass. That one is really great to offer a lot of substrate for your aquatic insects to hang out in. It offers a lot of structure down there. And it was also a favorite of our mosquito fish that we raise here. I had a lot of Cara in the tanks, and their breeding did really well while the Cara was in there. The females like to go inside of those submerged plants, and that's where they are able to quietly and safely give birth away from the other fish that would just eat their fry as soon as they came out. Illinois pondweed is another one. That's another one we have in our gambusia, our mosquito fish tanks, that the mosquito fish do like to go in for refuge. You also need a lot of emergent aquatic plants, especially in that buffer zone around your pond, to capture those nutrients. Additionally, in addition to that, they can shade out the sunshine hitting the water, which will reduce any algae. So that's very important. They are also shade for predatory fish, areas where the predators can sit and hide and watch for mosquito larvae and other things to go by. They're also great perches for dragonflies. Dragonflies and damselflies, they love to perch near a water body. So something tall coming out of the water like pickerel weed or some grasses or sedges or reeds are great for them. And you also want to have plants that will bloom throughout the year. You want those emergent blooms and foliage to support our pollinator populations. So these are my favorites of the emergent aquatic plants for pollinators. And this is just, a suggested list. These are all natives, of course, absolutely, only natives. And these are ones that I think would be best for attracting pollinators as well to your pond area. That way you can have an additional pollinator garden in the water. So I'll go through a few of these, starting with the purples, because purple is the best. The pickerel weed and Savannah iris. The purple color is really attractive to a lot of our species of pollinators, so that will really be something good to attract bees and butterflies to come for a nectar source. Then I really also like Sagittaria and buttonbush, the white flowers. That's another color that can be really attractive for a diverse array of pollinator species: butterflies, bees, wasps, beetles, flies. Don't be afraid to attract all of these. They're good to have. Don't want to have any phobias. That's okay. It's okay to have wasps around. Just don't make them angry. Our native Canna flaccida lily is beautiful flower. That's one reason to plant it, but also it is the host plant for the Brazilian skipper butterfly, which you see pictured here. So you can have something attracting pollinators and supporting the life cycle of a butterfly. This is another one that's good for supporting an entire life cycle, our native lilies. They are the host plant for this beautiful moth pictured here called the Spanish moth. Some people call this caterpillar the convict caterpillar, but it's a beautiful moth. Good to plant this lily. Do not be upset if you see it getting eaten. That's a good thing. We want to see our plants eaten. That means they are providing a resource for our native insects. So we want to feed the whole food chain. So we got to be ready to see some damage in our plants. Alligator flag is one that is not, it's not there to attract alligators, but sometimes it does. It's in the deeper water and it has these beautiful dangling flowers that our native bees just absolutely love. This one is one that comes with a disclaimer. It is a absolute favorite wetland plant of mine. I can't imagine having a wetland without it. And Marlene knows because she helped me track down a couple of spotted hemlock plants for my little pond. And this is an absolute magnet for pollinators. When it blooms, the bees, the butterflies, the beetles, the flies, the wasps, again, all of them, they love it, they will come to it. And additionally, it is the host plant for our native eastern black swallowtail butterfly. So it will be supporting the life cycle of that butterfly if you plant it. Just, you know, maybe put up signs, tell people not to eat it. Not that people go around eating random plants in the wild, but just to protect yourself, maybe have a sign out there that says, you know, do not touch. The elderberry is a look-alike to the water hemlock. If you want something that has a similar spray of beautiful white flowers without the toxicity, the elderberry will do that, and again will be attractive for your bees, flies, and wasps. Not as many butterflies. I haven't seen a whole lot of butterflies on this, but you don't have to worry about people eating it and, you know, getting sick. And in fact, it's actually a medicinal plant and has edible properties. The bacopas are a really great one to have as a ground cover on the edge of your pond or wetland, an absolute must. My favorite being this purple one here, the lemon bacopa, which smells like lemon when it's crushed underfoot. And the bacopas are host plants to our native white peacock butterfly. So gorgeous plant will attract this gorgeous butterfly and support its life cycle in your area. And water lilies are another great one to have. This one isn't the host plant of anything that I know of. Again, I could always be wrong, but it does have these beautiful flowers. Who doesn't love a water lily? And again, the white and purpley colors will be very attractive to your bees and your butterflies. And finally, the last plant that is an absolute must-have to plant in the littoral zone around your wetland is going to be our native milkweed. Make sure you get the native. You're not going to find this at Home Depot or Lowe's or anywhere else. You have to go to a native plant nursery, and you're going to want to get this Asclepias incarnata, also called sometimes the rose milkweed or the swamp milkweed. And that loves to grow in wet areas, and it's a great nectar source. A lot of insects love milkweed flowers, but it's also the host plant for 3 species of butterflies. You can support monarchs, queens, and soldier butterflies with this one plant. So I don't see any reason not to have it. You should absolutely fill up your wetland with a lot of these plants. And there are many more that I didn't mention. Anything you can add, native aquatic plants that bloom year round with diverse blooms will help our different pollinators, as well as taking those nutrients out of the water to help support a healthy ecosystem, minimize your midges, minimize your mosquitoes, and maximize your enjoyment. So with that, I can now take questions, and you can also feel free to email me after this if you have any follow-up questions that you think of later. And I want to thank you all for listening and thank everyone who came. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Kara. This is all really very interesting. I did get one question in the chat. I'm going to read it to you. What about submerged lights? They attract insects, but also fish. So are they good or bad?
You know, that's an interesting question, and that's not something I've actually seen any information on. I'm not sure if anybody's looked into that. I would think that it wouldn't be as much of a problem as the lights at night on houses, since it is under the water, but I can't say that for sure. Nothing's ever certain.
So do we have any other questions out there?
I have a question. It's Marlene. Kara, when we have these flood ditches or the ditches that fill up with stormwater, all part of our stormwater system, they seem to have fish in them and attract wading birds almost immediately. Where do those fish come from?
That's a good question. The best guess is that when it's raining really hard and you have all that water washing into those ditches, most of the ditches connect at some point to a body of water, like a canal or a pond. So when it's at its most filled during the heaviest of the rain, it's likely that the fish are able to enter those ditches really quickly. Maybe it's a really short time period, maybe only an hour that they're connected, but then they travel quickly throughout the ditch system.
Thanks.
So I have a question. So I live on a tidal lake, so it's probably brackish, mostly saltwater. What's the difference between the bugs and mosquitoes that I'm going to get as opposed to freshwater?
So brackish and saltwater, you're going to be attracting, for mosquitoes, you're going to be more likely to see salt marsh mosquitoes in your area. There's also some mosquitoes that are in the genus called Anopheles. We have a few species of Anopheles that can live in brackish water, and some of those species are the ones that can carry malaria. So a lot of people don't realize we do have the species here that can transmit malaria. And the only reason we don't have malaria actively spreading here is because our population is not ill with it. But we do have that species here living in both our saltwater and our freshwater areas. We also have in your area, in the salty areas, you might get some species of Culex mosquitoes. They can live in the salt brackish water, and they can vector West Nile virus, triple E, Eastern equine encephalitis virus, and St. Louis encephalitis virus. So those are the ones that are most likely to be found in your brackish or saltwater habitats. For midges, though, I can't say for sure. I don't know the different species of midges. Very few people do. It's a very specific area of study. But there are many species of midges that we see in the saltwater and brackish water areas. But the other species that you might find out there that I didn't talk about are, you might see deer flies, you might see no-see-ums. Those guys like the brackish water and saltwater areas.
Definitely, yeah, we definitely get those no-see-ums.
Absolutely.
Other questions? You can unmute yourself or throw it in the chat.
Speaking of no-see-ums, why do we have, this is kind of a bizarre question, sorry. Why do we have a mosquito control district and not a no-see-ums district?
The reason for that, the main reason we have mosquito control is not just because they're a nuisance, but it's for disease control. And our no-see-ums here don't vector any diseases at this time that we know of. Again, that can, things can always change, but they're not a vector of anything here. So it's not something that needs to be controlled from a human health standpoint. It's just more a human annoyance. And additionally, even if they were to be controlled, the reason we're able to control mosquitoes is because most of them have this life cycle wherein they all come off in one brood. So all the mosquitoes, all the eggs hatch at one time for some of the species we target. So we're able to kill them all at once. We're able to target the larvae, especially in a habitat, spray them with a larvicide, kill them all before they come off. But the no-see-ums don't have that synchronous development. They are more asynchronous, so they're just kind of always out there, always hatching off. So it would be constant spraying would be needed to control the no-see-ums, whereas the mosquito control spraying can be very separated. So we can do, one treatment today and then not have to spray again for a month, but no-see-ums would have to be an everyday thing.
So what do I do if I see a lot of mosquitoes in my neighborhood and it's really getting bad?
The best thing to do is to call us at Mosquito Control, because we have service request inspectors. They can go out, they can identify which species it is, and then they can identify where it's most likely to be coming from. They can go and search the surrounding area, try to find either the larval source, or they can find where the adults are most concentrated, and then we can set up a treatment to make sure that they get treated in a timely manner.
You still have the online reporting that you used to be able to do?
Yes, yep, we have on our website, we have an online report form where you can go and fill it out for a request. You don't even have to call and talk to anyone. You can do it at midnight or 2 a.m. whenever you're up and thinking about how angry you are about those mosquitoes.
Great. Any other questions out there?
Not as much a question. This is Andy. Kara, I appreciate you mentioning several things during your discussion on the nutrients and the plants. And even though you mentioned that it may have been mentioned other times, it's good to bring all these things together and show how they do interwork with each other, whether you're an entomologist or an engineer or a biologist or just a homeowner interested in taking better care of their property.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing I have done is I've been on a few mosquito control service requests where the people were actually calling about midges, not mosquito control. And I did try to always have wet plan brochures to hand out to the people and tell them, you know, your midge problem is a water quality problem. Here's an organization you can get with, and they can help you solve your water quality problem to get rid of your midges long term. So that it's definitely something that I love to remind people about. I'm not shy about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'd love to hear that. So yeah, I especially liked your comment about, you know, expect that your plants are going to get eaten a little bit, you know, that it is, as long as it's not totally out of control, it means that you're feeding, you know, the whole ecosystem. I think that's a great point, because a lot of times we're so worried about, you know, our plants getting eaten up that we're busy concentrating on that, not realizing that it's a whole system that works together.
Absolutely. Yeah. I get disappointed when I don't see my plants being eaten. That makes me upset. I think, where are my bugs at? Why aren't they here eating my plants? So it's always exciting to see insect damage on a plant when you're an entomologist.
So, hey, we have time for a couple more questions, and then I'm sharing my screen so that I can show you a few things before we get off. Are there any more questions out there?
I see one, sorry, I see one in the chat box from someone who can't unmute, from Carolyn, about mosquito control recommended by Doug Tallamy. I'm not familiar with the mosquito control he recommended, so I can't comment on that, on whether it would be effective for midges as well.
The only thing I know of is he repeated the same thing you said about the lighting and how lights are so detrimental to the insect population and how important the insect population is to birds and the whole ecosystem. But I've got nothing more than that.
Okay, Carolyn, if you want to, if you have any more details on the mosquito control recommended by Doug Tallamy, or if you want to email me later, I would definitely be interested in looking into that and seeing if I can find an answer to that question.
Hey, Kara, it's Win. I got another question. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Wow, really, really nice presentation. Great. I put in the
Thank you.
chat box, great video. That was cool how you could wrap that stuff in so we could see some of the stuff that's hard to see.
Yeah.
So imagine that I just moved here from Michigan, and you know, I'm in a community and I've got a stormwater pond, and it's like a lot of these stormwater ponds where it's just been, you know, mowed down to the edge, and maybe somebody's poisoning it with copper sulfate, and maybe there are things I don't have control over. And I think there's too many mosquitoes, and a lot of times we think, oh, it must be that water, that must be the problem. And what was so cool about your talk is thinking about your pond as a source of mosquito control is quite beautiful. So if you move into a new neighborhood and you've got a damaged pond, what would you say is the first step, or what are the first couple of steps to try to move it back towards, sorry, I was trying to catch your language, you know, about a functional ecosystem that works?
The first step, what I would always recommend, is just adding lots of native plants, lots of native vegetation, and just stopping any chemical use right then and there. And of course, again, something people forget about is preventing any more nutrients from entering. So a lot of people don't think about those grass clippings, and they'll be mowing right up to the edge of their pond and sending all those grass clippings flying right into the pond. So that would, first step would just be adding in plants to suck up the nutrients and stopping any more nutrients from entering. And that'd be the best course of action.
I was shaking my head yes and realized you could neither see me nor hear me.
Thanks, Wynn. Any more questions out there?
I just wanted to say my favorite part of Kara's talk was the quote, "Nature's little tiny hot dogs."
I'm glad, I thought you would like that, Marlene. You like your beach French fries.
That's right. Thanks, Kara.
All right, if we don't have any more questions there, then maybe we'll start wrapping up here. And again, thank you, Kara. That was great. I really enjoyed your talk, and I'm sure everyone else did. And
you.
just to remind you, can everyone see my screen? I got the web plan site up. Are you looking at it? So I just wanted to remind you that under resources, you can go to videos. And if you know you have a friend who, all right, I think you can go to videos. There we go. If you had a friend who wasn't here for this talk and you'd like to recommend that they hear it, you'll be able to find our Pondside Talk past webinars on that video tab under resources. So there's other videos as well. We've got a lot of videos from different HOAs and neighborhoods where they've tried something and it's worked well. So you got some of that, but then if you keep scrolling down, you'll find our Pondside Talks and you can share that with your friends. The other thing we wanted to remind everyone of is that we are still open for our pond competition. So if you scroll down on the homepage of the wetplan.org site, you will see Lee County Pond Competition, and the competition is open to the best ponds. So if you've done a really great job with your pond and it's looking beautiful and working really well, and you'd like to enter to win for bragging rights, and we'll give you a display plaque, you can do that. On the other hand, if you're living on one of those ponds that maybe needs a little bit of help and you could use some advice and maybe a mini makeover, you can enter for that. So if you click on that poster, it will actually take you to a site where you can accept all of this stuff after you've read it and move on to answering a few simple questions. So we're encouraging everyone to take advantage of this contest. It'll be a great resource for you and your community. And we're hoping to get a bunch of entries. Maria, when is it open till? It's open till September?
January 2022.
Oh, January.
The end of January 2020.
Okay, so it's open till January. So you got a lot of time to get your application in. You do want to get approval from your HOA if you have one. So be aware of that. But we're hoping people will enter. And please come back and visit the wet plan site frequently because we update it a lot. We're always adding the videos and other resources. So it's a great place to go to find out how to take care of your pond and how to take care of your environment. So again, thank you to Kara. And we really appreciate your presentation today. And with that, we will say, everyone have a great day and thanks for attending.
Thank you. Bye.